Imagine the warm crackle of vinyl on a late-night radio, a time when a simple melody could get you arrested. Behind the bright harmonies of the 60s lie cold shadows of Paranoia, a harmless children's tale investigated by the FBI, a masterpiece banned over a single word. And waiting at number 1, you will discover how a quiet acoustic song with no answers became the ultimate threat to the American establishment. Today, we're counting down 15 controversial songs that defined the 60s. Number 15. Puff the Magic Dragon by Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Puff the Magic Dragon.
A simple typewriter clacking in a college dorm room in 1959 birthed what should have been just a gentle sigh for lost childhood. 19-year-old Leonard Lipton wrote a tender poem about a boy named Jackie Paper growing up and leaving his imaginary dragon behind.
And frolicked in the autumn mist.
The production was a masterclass in folk minimalism. Just 2 acoustic guitars and a flawless 3-part vocal harmony. It created a quiet sanctuary, offering a moment of pure stillness against the chaotic backdrop of the early 60s. It soared to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, embraced by families as a soothing lullaby.
Puff the Magic Dragon.
But in 1964, the innocence was fractured. An article theorized that the lyrics were a secret code for marijuana. The cultural anomaly here was astonishing. Parents panicked, and conservative radio stations blacklisted the record. This polarizing reaction perfectly defined the paranoia of the decade, a society so anxious and deeply divided that it projected its own dark fears onto a harmless fairy tale.
Puff the Magic Dragon.
Peter Yarrow spent his life defending its purity. Yet, this surprisingly enduring masterpiece remains a testament to the era. The controversy was never really about a dragon. It was a mirror reflecting a generation that was terrified of losing its own innocence. And speaking of a generation losing its way,
Painted wings and giant's rings make
Number 14. My Generation by The Who. Imagine the raw frustration of watching your beloved car towed away by the authorities. That exact resentment fueled Pete Townshend in 1965 to write a battle cry for the British working-class youth. The studio session was a beautiful collision of aggression and art. John Entwistle repeatedly snapped the thick strings of his Fender Jazz bass just to capture that thundering solo. Townshend deliberately weaponized guitar feedback, pioneering a sound that laid the groundwork for punk rock. When the song climbed to number 2 on the UK charts, the BBC surprisingly banned it. Their reasoning was a cultural anomaly. They did not censor the anti-establishment lyrics. Instead, they feared Roger Daltrey's iconic stuttering would offend listeners with speech impediments. In reality, he was capturing the authentic voice of a teenager stuttering with a rage too immense for words. The youth embraced the lyric, "Hope I die before I get old," as a sacred vow. We owe this band a debt of gratitude for turning raw teenage alienation into a masterpiece. The controversy here was not just a radio ban. It was the absolute manifestation of the generation gap. It perfectly defined the 60s because it proved how deeply the older establishment misunderstood the fiery hearts of their own children. And, speaking of authorities completely missing the point, Number 13, Louie Louie by the Kingsmen, 1963. It is hard to believe that the Federal Bureau of Investigation spent 31 months in a laboratory trying to decode a rock and roll record. In 1963, terrified parents were convinced a local garage band was hiding dirty words in their music. The truth behind the audio was far less sinister and much more practical. A group of teenagers in Portland just wanted to record a quick song before leaving for college. They had terrible equipment. Lead singer Jack Ely wore heavy dental braces and had to tilt his head back to shout into a single microphone dangling from the ceiling. They recorded it live in one single take. The result was a slurred, muddy vocal track that nobody could actually understand. That unintentional mystery pushed the song to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. Kids bought the record in massive numbers just to guess what Ely was saying. After playing the tape at every possible speed, government agents officially declared the lyrics unintelligible. The moral panic was entirely projected by adults who feared what they could not comprehend. Meanwhile, the youth simply gravitated toward that raw, unfiltered energy. The Kingsmen left us with a polarizing but enduring lesson. Rock music did not always need a clear message to start a fire. It only needed a pulse. Number 12, Society's Child by Janis Ian, 1966.
Faces clean and shining black as night.
Imagine being 14 years old and having the courage to write about a topic that terrified the entire adult population. Janis Ian penned a heartbreaking acoustic ballad about a romance between a white girl and a black boy. It was a raw, innocent reflection of the racial tension tearing the country apart.
Now I could understand your tears.
The production was incredibly stripped down. The studio utilized a delicate harpsichord to emphasize the fragile innocence of youth. However, radio programmers were paralyzed by fear. Across the United States, stations strictly boycotted the track. Promoters even received physical threats for trying to play it. The broadcasting industry simply deemed the reality of an interracial relationship too controversial for their audiences.
She says I can't see you.
That heavy silence remained unbroken until the highly respected classical conductor Leonard Bernstein discovered the track. Recognizing its profound emotional weight, he invited the teenage songwriter to perform on a nationwide television broadcast. Suddenly, the boycott shattered. The single surged to number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100.
My teachers all laugh, they're smirking.
It proves a surprisingly enduring truth about censorship. You can block a record from the local radio, but you cannot suppress a genuine human story once the public finally hears it. Janis Ian forced a divided society to look in the mirror, delivering a quiet protest that permanently expanded the boundaries of pop music.
They believe it, then why won't they?
Number 11, 8 Miles High by the Byrds, 1966. Before psychedelic rock became a global movement, a group of folk musicians tried to capture the terrifying feeling of their very first airplane flight to London. The lyrics were a literal description of their cruising altitude, but the broadcasting industry completely misunderstood the assignment. Inside the studio, guitarist Roger McGuinn drew inspiration from an unexpected source. Instead of listening to other rock bands, he heavily studied the frantic improvisational saxophone solos of jazz legend John Coltrane. McGuinn translated those chaotic jazz notes directly onto a Rickenbacker 12-string electric guitar. The result was a swirling, dizzying audio landscape that made listeners feel like they were physically floating in midair. The single quickly climbed into the top 20 on the Billboard Hot 100. However, an influential broadcasting report flagged the word "high" in the title. Paranoia quickly took over. Radio executives assumed it was a blatant promotion of illegal substances and issued a strict nationwide blacklist. The Byrds desperately tried to explain they were just singing about an airplane, but the damage was already done. The ban severely hurt their commercial momentum that year. Yet, in their attempt to silence the record, censors accidentally gave it a dangerous, mysterious allure. It remains a fascinating historical moment where a band invented a completely new genre of music, only to be punished for a message they never intended to send. Number 10, Mississippi Goddam by Nina Simone, 1964.
And everybody knows about Mississippi Goddam.
Pure, unfiltered rage can sometimes forge the most enduring art. Sitting completely alone, consumed by anger after a tragic church bombing that claimed the lives of 4 little girls, Nina Simone crafted this heavy protest song in under an hour.
I can't stand the pressure much longer.
She purposefully used an upbeat, lively rhythm that sounded like a Broadway musical. This bright melody served as a Trojan horse for her devastating lyrics. She wanted to force comfortable listeners to tap their feet before realizing they were actually dancing to a deep cry for racial justice.
Black cat crossed my path. I think every day's gonna be my...
The public reaction was severely divided. While the civil rights movement embraced it as their fierce anthem, the broadcasting industry in the southern United States launched a vicious boycott. Radio promoters were so offended by the title and the message that they physically snapped the vinyl records in half and mailed the broken pieces back to her record label.
I don't belong here, I don't belong there.
The ban severely damaged her mainstream commercial success, but she accepted that price without hesitation. By sacrificing her safety on the pop charts, Nina Simone proved that true artists must reflect the painful reality of their times.
He knows about Mississippi Goddam.
Number 9, God Only Knows by the Beach Boys, 1966.
I'll make you so sure about it.
Imagine writing a melody so beautiful that Paul McCartney publicly names it the greatest song ever written, only to have your own country refuse to play it. Brian Wilson was exhausting himself in the studio, desperately trying to push pop music beyond simple surfing tunes. He wanted to create a genuine spiritual experience.
The world will show nothing to me.
To build this lush sound, Wilson abandoned standard rock equipment. He brought in French horns, accordions, and harpsichords, meticulously layering them over a highly complex bass line. He then asked his younger brother Carl to deliver the lead vocal, perfectly capturing a feeling of pure, youthful vulnerability. The arrangement was a triumph of studio engineering. But the American broadcasting industry was paralyzed by a single word. At the time, putting the word God in the title of a commercial pop record was considered highly taboo. Fearful of offending religious listeners, countless stations completely boycotted the track, causing it to stall at number 39 on the Billboard Hot 100.
And God only knows what I'd be without you.
Meanwhile, audiences in the United Kingdom embraced the beauty, sending it to number 2. Time eventually exposed the severe short-sightedness of that radio ban. Today, the world recognizes this track not as a religious insult, but as a deeply sincere expression of devotion. Brian Wilson successfully proved that popular music could hold the emotional weight of a classical symphony.
God only knows what I'd be without.
Number 8, White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane, 1967.
And if you go chasing rabbits.
Grace Slick sat at a second-hand piano staring at a copy of a famous children's book. She noticed a glaring hypocrisy in adult society. Parents read their children stories about magic mushrooms and strange pills, yet harshly punished teenagers for experimenting with their own minds. She decided to write a musical trap.
Man on the chessboard, get up and
To make the trap irresistible, the band borrowed a trick from classical music. Instead of a standard rock beat, they used a slow Spanish bolero rhythm that gradually builds in tension. Slick delivered her vocals with icy precision, perfectly masking references to LSD behind the innocent characters of Alice in Wonderland.
and your mind is moving.
The disguise worked beautifully. While radio censors were usually quick to ban any mention of illicit substances, they were completely fooled by the fairy tale imagery. The track slipped right past the broadcasting gatekeepers and climbed to number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100.
I think you'll know.
When the authorities finally understood the real message, it was already too late. The song had become an enduring anthem for a generation seeking expanded consciousness. Jefferson Airplane proved that the most effective way to beat a strict system is not by shouting at the walls, but by walking quietly through the front door wearing a clever disguise. Number 7. Let's Spend the Night Together by the Rolling Stones, 1967. Picture the rigid tension inside an American television studio. A young British band was about to perform for millions of conservative families, but a powerful network host demanded a compromise. The original lyrics were deemed far too direct for primetime broadcasting. Mick Jagger originally wrote this upbeat track as a blunt invitation for romance, breaking away from the polite metaphors of the early 1960s. In the studio, the band crafted a driving, piano-heavy rhythm. They even pushed the boundaries of standard percussion when their manager repeatedly slammed a heavy wooden door to create a sharp, aggressive background beat. When forced by host Ed Sullivan to change the chorus to "Let's Spend Some Time Together" to protect the innocent ears of viewers, the band faced a difficult choice. Rather than walk away, they agreed to the censorship. But during the live broadcast, Jagger deliberately rolled his eyes directly into the television camera every single time he sang the altered line. The youth completely understood the sarcastic gesture. It was a brilliant visual rebellion. While conservative radio stations heavily restricted the song, driving it to number 55 on the Billboard Hot 100, the televised moment became legendary. The Rolling Stones proved that you could technically follow the rules of a strict system while completely mocking it from the inside.
I'm in no hurry, I can take my time. Oh.
Number 6. Je t'aime, moi non plus by Serge Gainsbourg and Jane Birkin, 1969. Sometimes a recording is so intimate that listening to it feels like an invasion of privacy. French provocateur Serge Gainsbourg wanted to capture the exact sound of a private romantic encounter. He brought his lover, English actress Jane Birkin, into a dimly lit studio in London to create a deeply controversial audio diary. The production was intentionally sparse. Over a slow, hypnotic organ melody, the two simply whispered to each other in French. The microphone was placed incredibly close to Birkin's mouth to capture every single sigh and heavy breath. It was a raw, unfiltered documentary of physical attraction translated directly onto vinyl. The establishment reacted with immediate outrage. The Vatican issued a formal public statement condemning the record as highly offensive. Across the English Channel, the BBC completely banned it from their radio airwaves, genuinely horrified by the explicit audio performance. But that strict censorship worked like a massive, unpaid advertisement. Driven entirely by curiosity and a desire to rebel, the public bought millions of copies in secret. It made history as the very first banned song and the first completely foreign language track to reach number 1 in the UK. Gainsbourg proved that human desire will always outsmart government restrictions. Number 5. Light My Fire by The Doors, 1967. A live television broadcast was supposed to be the ultimate reward for a rising rock band. An intro that sounded like a dark carnival, heavily inspired by classical composers. It was a long, complex arrangement designed to pull the listener into a deep trance. When the live cameras rolled, Morrison looked directly at the nation and deliberately sang the television executives were furious, permanently banning The Doors from their studios. Shifting tide of the 1960s. The youth did not want polite king the rules on live television as the politicians easily avoid the military draft for the Vietnam War. He realized the heavy burden fell entirely on the working class. He channeled that deep frustration into a fiery protest anthem that lasted just under 3 minutes. The band completely avoided complex studio tricks. They relied on a raw, driving rhythm and sharp electric guitars to deliver a punch directly to the chest. Fogerty pushed his voice to a gritty scream, representing the voice of every ordinary citizen who felt ignored by the powerful elite. The track quickly climbed to number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100. However, its upbeat, marching energy created a fascinating paradox. Because the loud chorus sounded so proud and aggressive, countless politicians over the next few decades mistakenly played it at their campaign rallies. They completely missed the fact that the song was written to criticize people exactly like them. This historical misunderstanding actually proves the immense power of the record. The rhythm is so infectious that people simply want to march to it, even if they never read the lyrics. It remains the ultimate working-class anthem, proving that a 3-minute rock song can expose societal inequality better than a long political speech. Number 3. Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones. 1968. Mick Jagger was deeply immersed in French literature when he decided to write a song from the perspective of Satan himself. It was not a promotion of dark magic, but rather a sharp historical critique. He wanted to point out that humanity did not need supernatural forces to commit terrible atrocities throughout history. The recording process was incredibly frustrating. The track originally started as a slow folk song, but it lacked energy. Finally, Keith Richards suggested shifting the entire arrangement. They adopted a relentless, hypnotic samba rhythm, heavily layering percussion and a frantic piano. The famous backing vocals were completely improvised by the band and their guests, chanting in the background like a mysterious ritual. The public was both mesmerized and terrified. While the driving beat helped push the Beggars Banquet album to massive commercial success, conservative groups immediately accused the band of devil worship. When a tragic riot broke out at their Altamont concert a year later, critics unfairly blamed this exact track for summoning the violence. That severe backlash only cemented its status as a timeless piece of rock history. The Rolling Stones forced society to acknowledge an uncomfortable truth. By looking directly into the darkest corners of human nature, they created a surprisingly enduring piece of art that still feels dangerously relevant today. Number 2. A Day in the Life by the Beatles, 1967. John Lennon was simply reading the morning newspaper, turning tragic daily news into a haunting melody. To finish the track, Paul McCartney added a completely different, upbeat middle section about his morning routine. They needed something massive to connect these two contrasting halves. Producer George Martin brought 40 classical musicians into the studio. He gave them a highly unusual instruction. He told them to start at their lowest possible note and slowly slide up to their highest, playing completely out of sync with each other. The result was a terrifying apocalyptic wall of sound that perfectly captured the exhausting chaos of modern society. Despite pushing the absolute limits of studio engineering, the British Broadcasting Corporation panicked and immediately banned the track. Censors focused entirely on a single phrase, "I would love to turn you on," assuming it was a blatant promotion of illegal substances and a decadent lifestyle. The authorities completely missed the point. The band was not trying to promote a drug culture. They were pleading with a numb, sleepwalking society to wake up and truly experience the world around them. Today, this track stands as the absolute peak of their artistic partnership, proving that a band record can still define an entire era of modern art. Number 1. Blowin' in the Wind by Bob Dylan, 1963. A 22-year-old folk singer walked into a small cafe in New York and wrote a melody that terrified half of the American broadcasting industry. What is truly fascinating about this record is that the lyrics never once mention civil rights, racism, or the government. The studio production was stripped of any commercial gloss. Dylan simply sat with an acoustic guitar and a harmonica. He asked a series of heavy, unanswerable questions about human suffering and cruelty. The silence between his vocal delivery was intentional and deeply suffocating. He offered no loud political slogans, only an uncomfortable mirror for a divided society to look into. That quiet ambiguity made the track incredibly dangerous to the establishment. Conservative radio stations in the southern states panicked and immediately pulled it from their airwaves. They realized that a peaceful song making ordinary people stop and think was a much bigger threat to their power than a violent riot. Despite the severe radio bans, it became the defining anthem of the decade. Millions of people sang it together during historic marches across the country. Bob Dylan proved that you do not need heavy distortion or screaming vocals to permanently change the world. You just need the courage to ask the right questions. We did not just play old records tonight. We journeyed from an unintelligible teenage mumble that terrified the federal government to a romantic French whisper that angered the Vatican, and a quiet acoustic guitar that forced a divided nation to finally look in the mirror. These tracks reveal a profound and timeless truth. You can ban a physical record from the radio, but you can never extinguish the fire of human expression. The authorities who tried to bury these songs accidentally transformed them into immortal monuments of freedom. To keep this late-night time machine running, please press the subscribe button. Before we sign off the air, tell me in the comments below, which of these rebellious masterpieces still speaks the loudest to your soul today?